This is the Bears Barroom Radio Network. The following program is recorded live and intended for all audiences.
Radio is scripted now. We just come up with it. We don't use computers. We don't rehearse. We're going to talk about this next. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the Bulls. And then we're going to have Brad Big Son. And then we're going to have all this. No. If you don't know what you're going to talk about in the top of your head before a show, you shouldn't be in the business. I don't know what you got. I feel like Vince Vaughn in a couple's retreat. The Sharks are circling. Old school, baby.
You're listening to the Mike North Advantage, and it begins right now.
That's right. The Mike North Advantage starts right now. I am Aldo Gandia, Mike's wingman, and boy, oh boy, do we have another one for you. Another one. Mike's going to introduce this guest, but I got to tell you first that when I was a kid and this guy played at Notre Dame University, I was heartbroken when the Chicago Bears did not pick him up in the NFL draft. Just heartbroken. He went on to play in 2 Super Bowls. So anyway, Mike will do the introductions. I will sit here very quietly and enjoy the next 30-minute interview Mike has with this very special guest. Hey, and those of you listening live, get your questions in the chat room and I will try to squeeze them in at the end of the interview. Let me introduce Mike, though. Mike North, how are you, my friend?
I'm great, Aldo. It's great to be on with you in the bar room. A big day for us as usual. We've had a lot of big-time guests on this show. And I'll tell you what, I was watching the other day, and by the way, get on the chat board with your questions, all you thousands of folks out there. Also follow Bears Bar Room at Bears Bar Room and or at North to North. This guy here, I'll never forget. I met him at the Super Bowl. That was back in the day when you only had like 20 radio stations down there before they have the now 10,000, from Radio Moscow to anything else. And this guy came walking up to me, and he sat down, and I said, "This is Joe Theismann." But many times, Namath would walk up, and guys would just be walking around. And Joe Theismann sits down, and before we go on, we sort of were talking, we sort of hit it off. And at the end of the interview, Joe will he doesn't even remember this, but he said, "You know what, you want to go to lunch?" I go, "Whoa." I go, "Yeah." It's like in the 90s, Joe Theismann. I'm at lunch with Joe Theismann, which means, there's people gathering around. I really didn't need it as I was digging into my salad. But that being said, I was just like, I go, "Why did you ask me to lunch?" He goes, "You seem to know your stuff." And he says, "You're from Chicago." So I'm pleased to have with me a friend I haven't talked to for a while, but he had nowhere to go, so he gave me some time. Joe Theismann. What's up, Joe?
Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm great. Let's get the business out of the way because, I called you, and I'll tell everybody why I called you in a minute. But you got a book out, right?
Actually, I've got one coming out the middle of June. You can order it now. You can call your local bookstore or order it online. It's called How to Be a Champion Every Day. Got plenty of Notre Dame stories in there, and it's really the relationship between the world of sports, the world of business, and our own lives. It's not a sports book, but it's a book that bridges those 3 areas. And it's been a labor of love for me for a long time, and we're finally bringing it out the middle of June.
You know what? That's great. And you know what? You've done a few books. You're a motivational speaker. You do a lot of different things. You've done it all. You've done TV. You've done movies. You've been in the spotlight as a Super Bowl winning quarterback, most valuable player. I was thinking, though, the other night, the reason I called you, and I didn't even know you had a book coming out, is like many people are doing now, you start thinking about certain things. Well, I'm watching the NFL Network, and I see where they have the Washington Redskins, led by Joe Theismann, big presentation, as the 50-some, I don't know if it was 53rd, 54th best team of all time. I said, man, I don't know. I said, I know Joe. I told my wife, I don't know if he'd be happy about that ranking. So and then all of a sudden, I said, I'm going to look through my phone. Now, we take some people out of the phone, but the people we really like, we keep in, and there's your number. And I got to ask you, that's the reason I called you. Number 50 in the 50s, is that where they have you?
Well, let me just say this. Who knows how people rank things. I think, the 83 Redskin football team was the highest scoring team in history of football at that time. We were 16-3. We were 2 points from an undefeated season. We lose to the Cowboys. We lose to the Bears by 1 point, a 48-47 game, which was now the second highest scoring game in the history of Monday Night Football. I mean, there were a lot of very positives about that football team. To be ranked 50th, as time goes on, you just get pushed further and further back because everybody lives in the present. And here's the other thing, Mike, and this is I'm flattered and honored that you called. In our conversation, we didn't talk about football. You said, Joe, look, I saw your name in my phone, and I just wanted to call and see how you're doing. And that's so nice and so sweet of you, and I appreciate it. I'm doing the same thing. I'm going through my phone, calling people I haven't talked to in a long time. I think this is a time when we really get a chance to reflect and sort of reset our lives about the things that are important, our faith, the families, the relationships that we have and have developed over years. I mean, you and I have been doing this, 20 plus years. We've known each other over that period of time, and I was tickled to get a phone call from you and honored to be on the show again. But I'll tell you one thing: there isn't anybody else that would confuse Mike North's voice with anybody else in radio. It is.
Hey, let me tell you.
It is. I don't even know how to describe it, but I'll tell you something. You are.
You knew it was me right away when I called.
Right away, no question. No question.
Hey, Joe, I got to ask you about being biased in life, being biased against, having a chip on your shoulder. I believe a lot of what I got from internal fortitude. I had a chip on my shoulder. I didn't have a real good education. People doubted me. The same thing happened to you. I was going to ask this. Was the black quarterback more biased against than the shortest of quarterbacks, regardless of color, in the National Football League? Because you ended up in Canada with your impressive resume, along with a lot of other people, including Charlie Ward, who was deemed too short, Doug Flutie, all you guys. And I've contended over the years there was more bias, regardless of color, towards the short quarterback in the NFL, even though you had success with Len Dawson and Fran Tarkenton and others. What do you think about that?
See, Mike, I've never looked at color or size or anything. You look at the ability of an individual, irrespective to the things that you're referencing. What's the ability of that individual? Warren Moon had a great career in Canada. Career in Canada. Doug Williams, leads the Redskins to a Super Bowl. I mean, you look around the league, Russell Wilson, the things that guys are doing. To me, I look at their athletic ability, not the color of their skin or whether they're tall or short. Take Kyler Murray, for example. I basically said he should have stayed in baseball. But you know what? I'm glad he chose football. I think he throws the living daylights out of the ball.
But in the 70s, they didn't think that way, Joe. In the 70s,
not at all.
In the 60s, when they saw Joe Theismann, I'm sorry, I watched your whole career. I watched you run back kicks. I go, are you kidding me? That would never happen today of a quarterback of your ilk. That's the sort of disrespect that I saw. I go, come on. Joe Theismann's in Canada. How much did that motivate you? How much inner turmoil did you have because of that?
I didn't have any inner turmoil, Mike. I made the choice to go to Canada. I tried to negotiate my own contract, which was my first mistake. I didn't let professionals do the job for me, and emotions got involved. I didn't really get I ultimately got what I wanted from the Miami Dolphins, but I'd already made my mind up and signed in Canada. I loved my experience in Toronto. I love being up there. I love the people. It's still I consider it a home for me. 2 of my 3 children were born in Toronto General. So, it was a great experience for me. I've always been small. I mean, I went to Notre Dame, one of 13 quarterbacks. I'm 5'10" and 152 pounds.
Wow.
Matter of fact, there was a headline in a Newark, New Jersey newspaper, I believe, that said Theismann will get killed at Notre Dame. And just like you, that all you need to do is tell me I can't do something, and then just get out of my way. Now, you can call it spite, you can call it pride, you can call it a chip on your shoulder, whatever you want to call it, whatever motivates you as an individual. Take it, use it, and go for your dreams. And that's the other thing I tell a lot of people, man. Do not compromise your dreams. And don't let anybody ever tell you that you cannot accomplish anything you want. I mean, you and I are both classic examples where people really didn't think we could do anything with our lives. And it turns out that, you're in a position to be able to influence so many people out there that are listening to the Mike North Show. And, your opinion, the things that you observe and share with individuals. I do the same thing. It's a chance to be able to let people know that, hey, dreams come true. And don't let anybody throw water on your parade.
Do you wish that I often wish, you know what, maybe if I thought back then the way I think now, but if I thought back then the way I think now, maybe there wouldn't have been a back then. It's all part of growing up, but how much I was immature, even at the height of my career, and you get caught up in things. And believe me, Joe, I read about your personal life on Wikipedia. I'm exhausted, okay? I'm exhausted. I got to be honest with you. You went, Kathy Lee Crosby, are you kidding me? My knee started bothering me. Anyway, you have a different mindset that really, if you had the mindset you have now back then, would it have helped you? Or
I don't think the mindset has changed so much, but we grow up. We learn. I think the most important thing that we can do in our lives is take every experience and look at it. It's like, the punt that I had against the Bears, okay? My 1 yard punt, which, by the way, okay, let me just say this.
Yes.
I believe that is an NFL record, but they have Sean Landeta listed with a minus 6 yard punt. And I'm telling you, Landeta never touched the ball. So you couldn't qualify that as a punt. You have to qualify it as a fumble. So I am claiming the title as the shortest punt in the history of the NFL, and it happened right in Soldiers Field.
You hated the Bears. I think the Bears hated you. Some of the stories.
The living bejesus out of me. I've never been pounded more by a football team than the 84-85 Bears.
You've got your
ass. Oh my gosh, that was a day. I can still look at my body and think of where the bruises were after that game.
Your helmet was sideways. You looked pretty good at that point, I thought. Your helmet was sideways?
I was always sideways because I was laying on the ground.
You know what? The McMichael story, you run into him allegedly at a get-together, and you tell your wife, let's get out of here, and you walk away. True or not?
No, heavens no. I would never walk away from anybody. Never.
Have you ever heard that story?
No, I haven't.
You're kidding, because it says that the story basically was contended that McMichael was at a bar somewhere with a lady, and you were with your wife, and because of the pounding you got in that game, okay, when you saw him, you just said, not because maybe you didn't see him, you just decided to leave the area. That's what I read.
That is. I can unequivocally make the statement that is not a true story.
Good.
But it's funny. It's funny how people observe something and say something, and all of a sudden it becomes a story. Listen, that defensive line, I can close my eyes today and see that front seven: Mike Singletary, Otis Wilson, Wilbur Marshall, Richard Dent, Steve McMichael, Dan Hampton, Fridge Perry. I spent all afternoon underneath them. I should be able to recognize every one of them. Okay?
You know what, though?
I mean, come on.
You've been so blessed, and you know it, and everybody that gets some success, you've kept your head, yourself in the game. I was going to ask you, I see you on channels every so often. You seem to be outspoken about, you're a patriot, no doubt. But how much of the Notre Dame, and also being a Washington, D.C. Resident at the time and quarterback, how much of that got you into more political type of talk and being on political stations to maybe push your book or to talk about other issues?
Well, I think a lot of people, I think you have to take time to research things. I mean, I've had the opportunity to be around Bill Clinton, whom I think the world of. I've had the opportunity to be around President Bush, and I think in these times that we're in, there's no book on what we're dealing with right now. Every day, a new set of statistics comes up or a new model is shown, and the president and the people that he has around him advising him, making decisions. And it doesn't matter which side of the aisle you sit on. The most important thing is that we as American citizens, we as Americans have to get ourselves as safe as possible, be as smart as possible, and do the things that we're being asked to do. And because of the regulations, I guess you could call it, that have been put in place, the expectations of the deaths and all of the cases seems to be a much lower number than originally anticipated. And that is because of the American people. I give kudos to everybody out there for being smart. I wear a mask when I go out now. I mean, my wife and I, if we go for a walk, we don't have one, but we don't really get close to anybody. Let me tell you, Mike, everybody right now is going stir crazy, and your radio show is a blessing because they get a chance to see what the outside world is doing or talk to people from different walks of life. And so it's a breath of fresh air to be able to experience something besides walking around in your house. I mean, I talked to a friend of mine the other day. How many
times can you look at that MVP trophy since the lock? The MVP of the week, how many times have you stared at it?
Every now, when I walk by it, I pause every now and then, about 4 or 5 times a day.
Unbelievable. You know what? I gotta tell you, what you guys get together. I mean, do you have a closeness with Joe Montana? And are there certain guys like maybe a Ron Paulus that maybe you don't see? Is there still a fraternity of quarterbacks that there was back in the past, from John Hewitt to Terry Henry? Now you see Tony Wright. So. I mean, how is that?
Yeah. By the way, Terry Henry, I think just had COVID-19, and he's doing well. Just as an FYI, so Terry's doing well. But I'll run into him at autograph sessions. Of course, the big show out there in Chicago. Which got canceled just prior to the coronavirus. But we'll sit down. Dan Fouts, Lenny Dawson, Joe Montana. We'll sit down and just sort of reminisce a little bit. I spend a lot of time doing it, but I'll see them mostly at shows. We all have our lives. We all live in different parts of the country, but it's always fun to talk about the game the way it was and the game the way it is today. This is an entirely different football game. The economics are different. I mean, take a look. You look at the Bears, for example. I hope Mitchell Trubisky has a year like he had in 2018.
Me too.
And then now Nick Foles is coming. I mean, when you really stop and think, Nick Foles over the last 4 years has started 13 football games.
Thank you.
And then, I'm reading where they're saying, well, Mitchell Trubisky could be like a Tyson Hill down in New Orleans. I don't believe that one bit.
The same guys that said Cutler was going to be a big star for 8 years and lead us to Super Bowl glory, I mean, are saying that all of a sudden, the guy, come on.
Mike, you don't know. I mean, You really don't know. The biggest thing, Nick had a heck of a run for a very short period of time. But, you want to be able to play this game. It's like, yes, there were things that I managed to accomplish as a part of the Redskins in the NFL. But the thing that I'm singularly most proud of is I played in 163 consecutive football games. I never missed a day of work. I never missed a start. And that's the only way you get better at anything. It's like, life's not going to be normal anymore. We're not.
Right.
There is no such thing as what we experienced before. People will be working from home. People will be doing things online. I still believe if you're in sales, you have to get in front of somebody and be able to sell yourself, first of all, and then whatever you're trying to sell. So I think we're going to start to see more and more people getting out. I think within the next week to 10 days, certain states will start opening things up. I know in Florida they're talking maybe the beaches, to be able to get, people, doctors back doing surgeries, and just sort of getting life back to some semblance.
Well, that's all
of
important.
a start.
But I got to ask you something that's even more important. Do you consider yourself the handsomest 70-year-old man right now in the United States?
No, actually, I think you are. I really do. Isn't that Aldo? That's true, isn't it? I mean,
let's get to Aldo real quick because Aldo, you got to go in a few minutes. So Aldo wants to, of course, say you heard him at the beginning. I said, here he goes, because when Aldo knows football, he knows his quarterback, and Aldo say hello to one of your guys.
Oh my gosh! Like I said in the beginning, when the Bears failed to draft you in that draft, what was it, 1971? I was heartbroken. A big Notre Dame fan. Here's a guy that's just done it all at Notre Dame, and he doesn't get drafted by the Bears. Ouch! That really hurt, Joe.
Thank you.
Hey,
thanks, Aldo.
Lots of questions in the chat room. I'm going to try to squeeze a couple in, and then I got one about your book, okay, to finish it off. So Q from Cincy wants to know one last question for you. He said, because he's offered up a number of them, but he wants to know, do you think the Bengals will draft Joe Burrow or maybe surprise people and take the kid from Alabama, Tua? And what advice would you give to young quarterbacks coming into the NFL?
I think, first of all, I'll answer the second part first. I think any young quarterback that comes into this league, absorb as much as you can from the guys that have been here. It's a whole new world. It's a whole different world. We saw Daniel Jones go through it last year up in New York, Dwayne Haskins in Washington. Kyler Murray, because of his athletic skills, can make up for some of the learning things that he will get to this year. We saw with Lamar Jackson. We saw with Patrick Mahomes. I can go through the list. So I think the most important thing for a young guy is learn as much as you can and stay in the playbook. Learn to understand your job. What is your job? Number one, to stay healthy. Number two, to facilitate the ball to the people that can make plays for you. And number three, be smart. Be mentally tough, because you're going to get the living crap beat out of you. Physically, mentally, publicly. So just, get a thick skin. I definitely think Cincinnati will take Joe Burrow. They have to. I mean, the franchise needs a face. He had a terrific college season, albeit for one game or 1 year. I think that they take him. Tua is a great question. There's no doubt he's a terrific young man, but there's the injury factor. I think whoever gets Tua could wind up with a real gem, and I'm thinking he's going to go to Miami at the 5 spot. That's where I think he's going to wind up. Now, Justin Herbert is another one, and then, of course, Jordan Love. Those are the quarterbacks. And Jalen Hurts. I think he's sort of a wild card for a lot of people.
Yeah, I like him.
Just to be able to develop him, I think could work out well. I don't see Jalen Hurts being a guy that's going to come in and people say, you're going to be my starter. But there are a lot of teams that need quarterbacks, Aldo. I mean, I counted, I went through the top, I went through all of them. I think in the top 15, I could identify 7 teams that absolutely need the quarterback, but we don't have them. Whether it's through, Phillip Rivers going to Indianapolis or Nick going to Chicago in a competition. We got Kyle Allen down in Washington, came from Carolina in a competition. Tom going to, Tampa. I mean, but I think Burrow goes 1 to Cincinnati. Chase Young has to be the pick for the Redskins at 2. Has to.
Couple more questions, and then I'll get mine in here. Fat Mike wants to know that you played in 163 straight games in the NFL. What kind of a toll did that take on your body? You talked to us about how the Bears left you with some bruises, but just talk to us about, because every time we get an NFL player on here on the Bears Barroom, we tell them how much we appreciate that they sacrifice of themselves, of their health for our entertainment, and of course for their love of the game. But if you can put into words for us the sacrifice that it takes to play this NFL football.
Well, I think first of all, if you love something, you're going to do everything you can to continue to do it. I mean, just to give you an idea, I had 7 broken noses, multiple concussions, broke my right thumb, broke my right thumb, my right hand, dislocated my left elbow. Let me see, had turf toe, which was terrible, had a hip pointer. That's where the muscle tears away. Broke my right leg twice. lost my front teeth. Other than that, I really didn't have a whole lot happen to me.
And you look terrific. You look terrific for a guy that's had his face busted up about 15 times. Believe me.
Hey, Mike, I need a haircut. Let me tell you, this is the biggest problem with America today is everybody's true hair color is coming out, and everybody's hair has gone totally
You got a
crazy
bouffant as it is.
for those that have it.
Yeah, you have a bouffant as it is. Now, that thing's got to be Conway Twitty size almost by now.
Hey, let me squeeze in this compliment from Lady Bear 83. She says she lives near the Joe Theismann restaurant in Alexandria, Virginia, and she says every time she goes there, she has a great meal and wanted to compliment you on your restaurant there. And then my question.
I appreciate that.
You bet.
Let me just comment on that for a second, Aldo.
Please.
First of all, thank you so much for the comment. And secondly, we're gonna try and we're closed right now because of COVID-19. What we're going to do is we're going to try and open up our kitchen this week coming up to service the elderly in the Alexandria area and some of the other people of need. So my partners and I we talked about this just the other day. I feel for our staff. I feel for everybody that's out of work and being able to get back to a life, whatever it might be. But thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, here's my question. I just put in my pre-order for How to Be a Champion Every Day, 6 Timeless Keys to Success by Joe Theismann. And in the book notes, it says that Theismann draws on the people who have inspired and motivated him over the years, and it names a number of people, including head coach Ron Rivera, who we here in Chicago know and adore. Can you share a quick story about how Ron Rivera inspired you?
It's the story he tells basically about the epiphany that he had when he was driving one day. He always followed the rules. On 4th down and 1, you punt. And he followed rules. And then one day he was, I guess, daydreaming and came to a stop sign and basically rolled through a 4-way stop and almost got hit. And it was like an epiphany in his life. And he said, you have to be able to step outside that silo, that box that you create for yourself, and be able to think. And he became the title Riverboat Ron. And I cite the story there to emphasize to people that you just can't necessarily just put blinders on and just sort of follow life in a particular passion. Don't be afraid to open your mind to possibilities of things that can enhance your life, can enhance the people around you, can influence and change outcomes of circumstances and situations. And so that's the story I told about
that's
Ron.
A great story. That is a great story. And I'll tell you this, couple real quick things I got for you. I know my football. Been watching it since the early 60s. I have doubts about Haskins. I've watched him, not because he doesn't have an arm, not because of this or that. He's on a different type of team. I know Ron Rivera's going to be a big difference over there, no doubt. But I watched him last year, and I just see mystifying throws. It's throws that shouldn't be made. Do you have that same type of concern that I have, Joe?
No, I don't, Mike, and I'll tell you why. No one knows what Dwayne Haskins is. I've not seen enough. Like Daniel Jones, you saw basically through almost an entire season. Basically an entire season.
Okay.
And there's not enough of a sample size for me to say yay or nay. I like his toughness. I know he loves the game. Those are important to me. He throws the ball well. Now, how will he be able to process this new offense? The offense is not complicated at all. It's the same basically one that I ran with a numbering system. So I don't think you can make an evaluation of Dwayne Haskins on just what we've seen.
All right, and last one before we let you go. In my opinion, the Steelers of the 70s were tough. There's no doubt. But you broke into the 70s. But in the 80s, I'm sorry, the Bears, the Redskins, the Giants. We can go on and on and on. The 49ers, please. Is there a tougher era in football, in your opinion?
What was that last one? I'm sorry.
The 49ers, is there a tougher time? Was there a tougher period to win a championship than the 80s? Were the teams the most competitive at that time?
No, I think not just in the NFC, but in the AFC. I think there was a larger group of teams during that period of time that any one of them could have won a Super Bowl, AFC, NFC. I think that number is not as great today, and we see that with the same teams competing in the playoffs every year. And I'm thrilled that they've increased it a little bit. We're going to get some more teams in the playoffs, great opportunities, because now Cinderella gets a bigger slipper. What can I tell you?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, we're going to let you go. I appreciate it, Joe. Best of health as always. Thanks for joining Bears Bar Room, and you know what? We'll be on podcast, up on Twitter. And by the way, Joe, you have a Twitter handle. I don't know if you handle it or not because you're a big shot.
Yes, it's at Theismann7. I answer all my tweets. I appreciate everybody reaching out and with comments and questions and concerns and expressions and everything else. And, I think the most important thing I'd like to leave with everybody, Mike, and everybody listening is we're in this thing together. We'll get through this thing together. Love one another, take care of one another. If you can do something for someone today, do it, because when you put your head down on the pillow tonight, you're going to feel a whole lot better.
Yeah, and you know what? The last man to wear the single bar, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking to him on his face mask. And I would like to talk more about your wonderful marriages, but I didn't have enough time, okay? We don't have an hour and a half.
Thankfully, we ran out of time.
Joe, I love you, buddy. Take care.
You too, buddy. Take care. See you, Aldo.
Bye-bye.
Joe Theismann here on the Bears Bar Room, one of the great quarterbacks of a tough era, Aldo. Redskins, Bears, 49ers, Giants, Lawrence Taylor. I mean, you could talk to him for another hour about the broken ankle, about his battles with the Bears, about how the Bears really ruined him before anybody did, including Lawrence Taylor, by beating the crap out of him. But he's just an all-around guy. It was and a winner. And a guy that no doubt had a chip on his shoulder. You said it. I couldn't believe when the guy ended up in Canada. I'm sorry. I knew that this guy, we're talking about Nick Foles. Joe Theismann had to go to Canada. Warren Moon had to go to Canada.
That's crazy.
Are you kidding me, right? I'm not overstating this case.
No, yeah, I think that was a really, really good point. There was a time in the NFL where there were built-in biases by scouts, and they looked at a player's skin color, they looked at a player's height, they looked at some other things, and they immediately wrote them off, and that's a shame. And fortunately, we're at a period of time now in most professional sports, and I won't say all instances. We've still seen some instances of bias, but it's gotten a lot better than when you and I were in our prime and really understanding what was going on. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm sorry because Joe was being too nice. Believe me when I tell you this, folks. If you were 5'10" or 5'11", the fact that Doug Flutie, I don't care, he ended up playing for the Bears and for Buffalo and did great with Buffalo.
Yes.
Came in a tough situation with the Bears. I watched him play in college. I didn't care if he was 2'5". The guy was good enough to play in the National Football League, and I'm glad he eventually got his chance. But, if Doug Flutie had ended up in Canada, anybody, and that happened to many guys before that, and even if you were black and short, Charlie Ward was such a great athlete and could have been a pro quarterback. I believe that with all my heart, but he was such a great basketball player. He ended up playing for the Knicks for years. So, the biases are still there in certain positions, certain positions in the league still. And it's just mystifying to me. But you know what? Joe Theismann is always great. How you been, buddy?
I've been great. How about yourself? You've been going out for your daily walks?
I'm starting to look like, I don't know, Jeremiah Johnson. Does that movie mean anything to you?
Yeah, Robert Redford, absolutely.
Yeah, except that, forget about the looks. I'm just saying, the hair starting to grow a little bit back to my, the 60s days.
You got a beard going?
The hair was a little bit. How about you?
Well, my hair is always shaggy, and people are always making fun of me. I see a barber like twice a year.
Listen, I got an idea. I was looking the other day out of curiosity. you can get a good hazmat suit for $60. Okay?
I've looked into it.
Wait a minute. Then we can go and give haircuts.
There you go.
We go house to house. We give haircuts. We make a half a mil in a short amount of time, and then we hose ourselves down. That's it.
Yes, especially because of all the blood I'm going to get after I'm done with giving a haircut.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey.
Will there ever be another barber pole?
Oh, my gosh.
Everything. Will we ever shake hands? Will we ever hug?
Oh, my gosh.
I'm here to tell everybody, if I see Aldo and this thing is officially over, as soon as I'm hugging him.
Yes,
That's it.
yes.
I'm sorry he's going to run from me, but I'm hugging him.
I hear you. And then these Harvard scientists yesterday say, it could be 2022 before we can stop with social distancing if we don't come up with a vaccine. I'm like, what?
Yeah, come on. You know what? Believe me when I tell you this. This will all pass. Sensible heads are going to prevail. And you know what? Just hang in there, folks, a little bit longer. It snowed in Chicago today. So I smiled because I had to postpone my opening of the golf season under the rules right now because of the snow that we had. Speaking of cleaning up, though, the Bulls, right?
Yes. How about that? I am dying to talk to you about that. I got some sound from the new guy, Artūras, let me try this, Karnišovas.
AK, I call him.
There you go.
What do you think it's like to be seventh in command? I always wondered that. I heard he's going to take layups and work out with the team. This is a guy that took pictures when he was on his Olympic team or world team, took pictures of the NBA players. He's a frustrated NBA guy that wants to be in the NBA. And we got this guy. In fact, he's going to play more than Derrick Rose did the last couple of years. I mean, this is unbelievable. I can't believe it. But go ahead, play the sound.
All right, I got 3 or 4 sound bites here. First of all, he's got a long history with the Chicago Bulls because when he was a kid, he grew up watching Michael Jordan. This is him on NBC Sports.
Well, then I should be GM.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. I lost to in poker.
This is him talking to Casey Johnson on NBC Sports Chicago.
Yes, I mean I'm from generation of MJ. You know, since the day he was drafted with the Bulls in 1984. You know, the Bulls were the franchise to follow. It took them a while, obviously, to win championships, but you know, in the early 90s, they absolutely dominated. You know, the NBA and. The Last Dance that we're going to be watching starting on day 19. I think it's going to be exciting to watch those stories.
Stop it, please. I'm already falling asleep. My God, are you kidding me? Look, remember when we were kids? Well, not kids. We were in our 20s or 17, 18. And we'd go to bars, and we'd go to the local bowling alley. They served the minors. I'm not going to mention any names. And you'd run into some of the girls in the neighborhood. I go out with Bob. He's a policeman. I go, okay, never mind. You'd stay away, right? This is what they were called, stargazers. Okay,
yes.
That's what this guy is. He's a stargazer. That's what he is. Are you kidding me? He gets to play for the same or be seventh in command with the same organization that Michael Jordan played with. It's unbelievable.
All right, he's asked now what he likes in players. What kind of player does he like? And this is his response.
I like high pace. I like a lot of passing. Moving the ball, movement. Very important to me. I like read and react offenses. I like players playing off each other. That obviously comes with time. So, in terms of player, what I value in players is, our league is becoming positionless league. I like players that can play multiple positions, multi-skilled, versatile.
All right. We all know that. Those are good answers. Those are cookie cutter answers. I appreciate those. I mean, that's what you expect. I mean, what are you talking about? He covered everything. I like players that play this. I like the whole thing. I like more multiple positions. I'm not falling for it, Aldo. You know who the new genius is? Michael Reinsdorf. Okay?
Yes.
All of a sudden, he's a genius. He's been there since 2010.
Yes.
Has he been sleeping for 10 years?
Hey, Michael.
All of a sudden, he's Rocky Lawrence didn't get any power until the old man went. That's just the bottom line. Michael Reinsdorf finally figured it out, sitting on his hands since 2010, letting Paxson now be an advisor to him and to Jerry. I know the way the game's played. Jerry knows I know it. He knows it. And, the media can choose to ignore it and try to bamboozle Bulls fans like they've done with White Sox fans with Kenny Williams. Period. End of story.
Hey, Michael.
I'm sorry.
Hey, Michael, wake up. What time is it? Mike, you've been sleeping
My
for 10
God,
years.
I mean, look at it. All he's missing is the glasses. He's his dad. Look, Jerry Reinsdorf, like the guy. Sorry. This doesn't fool me. You got Jerry Reinsdorf, you got Michael Reinsdorf, you got John Paxson, you got Doug Collins over there still. I mean, come on. I mean, and there's other people. I heard today, I read in Joe Cowley on Twitter, there's some big voices that sort of want to keep boiling. I thought the AK guy was in charge.
That's the $64,000 question is what is he going to do with
Can't keep
Boyle?
Paxson there.
Yeah, well, let's hope that he's
Technical difficulties.
Sorry about that. You know what? The internet's being overused. I don't even want to see how many hours I'm on Twitter.
Yes.
But I was talking, I think we were talking about, they ran out. The fact is about Chicago, if people are wrong about somebody, they'll try to keep them alive to make themselves look good. I'm actually hearing that the Bears would have been better off keeping Cutler and having Trubisky be behind him. And he would have learned something. What would he have learned? That, a quarterback that didn't really come in and become a leader, a guy that had bad leadership skills, not by my account, but by, my account and other people, including players. Mm-hmm. So I hear that. They want Cutler to stay because they were wrong about him for so long. And the other one is Derrick Rose.
Yeah.
Derrick Rose will be alive before Derrick Rose and Cutler, there was Kerry Wood. You got Kerry Wood, Derrick Rose, and Jay Cutler. The media that was wrong or misguided about them will always latch on to them, trying to make their side look good. And really, when you look at the whole thing, all three ended up as a debacle in Chicago sports history.
You really believe that the Cutler thing was a debacle? That bad?
One win! One playoff win, yes! And you know what? He had trouble with teammates, not because of him not all the time. I'm not going to say that about Jay. Mm-hmm. I just thought he had no leadership skills. He moped on the bench. You know what? I think a big moment for him was when he was saying he was hurt when many people thought he should have played. I thought there was a huge moment. And if the fans thought it, there's no doubt some players bought it. So I think people want to keep his memory alive. And that's fine. But I got to tell you, I think the 8 years and the money that was spent is ridiculous. And Derrick Rose, I think he lost me when he would work out for an hour and a half before the game and then get in his suit. That's when he lost me. So whoever told him to do that wasn't a good thing either.
Well, yeah, I'm very disappointed in the career Derrick Rose had with Chicago. And, clearly he was a tremendous player. Clearly,
and he was hurt. And if he stays healthy, then we know it's a whole different ball game.
Right.
We do know that. But you know what? They got lucky to get him to begin with.
Yeah, and it was just the thing that bothered me about Derrick, because first of all, you love the story with his mom and growing up in a tough neighborhood and coming from nothing and being an elite player in the NBA and winning the MVP. That's all great. But once the injury started, he had this attitude where he was much more interested in the next contract than he was in trying to get back out there in the basketball court, and that just left a
And he had personal issues that became public.
Yeah, that was the other thing, too.
I mean, they got him as like the archangel of this town. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It didn't turn out the way that everybody thought it was, but he got that MVP year, which was fantastic. There's no doubt about it.
Yep. for sure. Hey, Mike, we got, besides the COVID thing, there's been some other bad news. We just have been losing people, Recently, Glenn Beckert, the second baseman for the Chicago Cubs, passed away. And he was one of my favorite Chicago Cubs from that era. Just a solid glove and a timely hitter. Was always batted second in that lineup. We all, guys from our era, we remember the lineup. Kessinger, Beckert, Williams, Santo, Banks, those were the top five.
Yep.
And your thoughts on the great Glenn Beckert?
Well, here, first of all, I met Glenn many times, being in radio, and it was a thrill. First of all, him and Santo were roommates, which means if you broke into that room, there was a chance you weren't getting out. Okay? Tough guys, good. I mean, Beck was a good-looking guy. He was a successful businessman in Chicago. He was a great ball player. He had 342, led the league one year, was an all-star second baseman, won a Gold Glove, after Bill Mazeroski ran off some things. But my biggest thrill was going to and I was more of a White Sox fan, but the Cubs players were the biggest personalities. I mean, after Aparicio and Fox and those guys in the 60s, forget about it. The Cubs owned it as far as players when it comes to Banks, when it comes to Kessinger, Beckert. Going into the 70s, Pepitone. You had Fergie. You had, just one star after the other. Johnny Callison, who was a great player. Bobby Mercer. I mean, these guys were all name players, and if you played for the Cubs, you were a bigger personality, than you were with the Sox. And I'll give you an example. I went to the Cub fantasy camp, and it was unbelievable. Joe Pepitone was our manager.
Wow.
Our manager. I got picked, really, I think I was the first pick in the draft. And I played with a bunch of great guys, and we had a banquet. You hung out with the ball players. You had 3 meals a day. You stayed at the DoubleTree in Arizona, right there. You played your final game. My dad was dying, and he went on the trip, and he saw me get a base hit down the right field line off Mo Drabowski.
How cool is that?
And my dad was, he had emphysema and all this other stuff. But, I got to meet Bert Campaneris. They brought in a lot of different players from other teams also. But the coolest guys was Beckert, Randy Hundley, Billy Way. All these guys, Pepitone, Santo, Pearsall was there. Unbelievable, yelling at everybody. So, Beck was a great guy. He really was. And they're going to miss him. And he was a hell of a second baseman before Sandberg.
Mike, and we've fortunately, we've gotten to see a World Series for the Northsiders before we passed away.
God.
But to this day, I don't think, in terms of a more lovable team, that 69 Cubs team, it was just, it broke your heart that they failed to get into the postseason. But just the likability of those guys was...
I love DeRocher.
Yes, Leo the Lip, absolutely.
I don't care what anybody says. That guy was cool. To me, he was a rebel. The guy, I think, wasn't he married to some movie star? I think.
Yeah, let me look that up real quick.
Look it up. I forget what her name was, but I know her name, and now it doesn't come to me. But Leo the Lip, then you had Beck, and then you had Santo, and you had Banks, who was great. That's what was great for helping, along with John McDonough and Jesse Jackson and others, to get the statue for Ernie. To actually be a part of that, because Ernie Banks was the biggest personality in Chicago, late 50s, early 60s, no doubt.
Well, he was married a total of 4 times. St. Louis socialite.
Just like Joe.
Yeah.
Just like Theismann.
The actress that he married to was Lorraine Day.
Lorraine Day.
Yeah.
Yeah, God bless. Leo was, he dressed dapper.
Yeah.
But, man, you know what? And that's when arguing with the umpires was so great in baseball. And that's a shame it's been taken away. Because Leo the Lip doesn't get that if you're playing under today's rules.
Yeah. All right. Another person who passed away. Did you ever get a chance to meet Al Kaline, who played 22 seasons for the Detroit Tigers? And what are your thoughts on the great Al Kaline?
I liked Al Kaline. I respect Al Kaline. I listened to him do baseball. But as a baseball player, he was a boring guy to watch, but he was so good. Maybe because he was so good. Mm-hmm. I mean, really, how many? Did you ever see Kaline play? You know, hey, Mantle. You got to remember when we were growing up, the other guys that were around.
Right.
You know, I made a comment the other day, and this is nothing against Al Kaline or any of them. I saw them all play, including Kaline, Clemente, Aaron, Mays. We all saw them. Nobody better than Pete Rose. Happy 79th birthday to Charlie Hustle. He was an all-star at 5 positions, a Gold Glover in right field twice. Guy was the hits king. To me, wanted to win more than anybody. Kaline was the same way, probably, and he broke in. He won a batting title when he was like 20 years old or something, a kid, and he was just steady, and that's what you respected about him. Did I hate to see him come up against the White Sox? Damn right I did. I would have preferred Bill Freehan or Willie Horton, the free swingers, or somebody like that over Al Kaline.
Willie Horton had the biggest neck on a human being I ever saw in my life.
If you got in a fight with that team, you listen to the guys you had to fight.
Yeah.
Willie Horton.
Oh, my gosh.
Ron LaFleur.
Oh, my gosh, yes.
Ron LaFleur was fresh out of prison to give you all you could handle.
That's right.
Gates Prowl. Billy Martin. Bill Freehan. If you got in a fight with that team, you were cooked. Billy Martin was a manager there.
That's right. That's right.
That's a tough team, man.
Oh my gosh.
Al Kaline was a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, that would be a great thing to talk about on an upcoming show. Just the top toughest teams in the history of sports. You got to think about the '85 Bears; those guys were tough. You got to think about some of the Raiders teams.
The baseball teams, you do.
Yes, baseball, exactly.
I mean, seriously, baseball teams, the Gas House Gang of the '30s, they didn't even wash their uniforms. You know,
That's right.
They played in the same. Hey, when's the last time your uniform was washed? 2 weeks ago. I'm Pepper Martin. You got a problem with that?
That's right. You get punched in the face.
I mean, seriously, you look at anything with Billy Martin, the Bronx Zoo. I mean, the Yankee teams with Reggie Jackson, they were going to beat each other's ass.
That's right. Ty
How
Cobb.
about the Oakland team? Bando, Jackson, Joe Rooney, all serious. Wally Fingers, who I know personally. Got big son of a guns. Are you kidding me?
Oh, my goodness. That is wild. Hey, what about...
Now you got Chris Bryant going, my shoulder bothers me.
That's right. I need a couple of weeks off.
I'm happy for him. They had a baby. Hey, I heard they had a baby.
Congratulations, Chris. All right, I wanted to get your comments on Dr. Anthony Fauci, the nation's top infectious disease expert. We see him almost every day on television talking about the coronavirus. He said, interviewed with Peter Hamby, that he could see baseball starting again in June if the games are played fan-free. Your thoughts on baseball resuming with no fans in the stands?
You hate to see it, but do whatever you got to do. You need sports. You got to get back. Am I going to watch the Pittsburgh Pirates play Arizona from Sunrise Stadium and Phoenix, Arizona? I don't know. I will if I have money on it, because then I'll be back in business. As far as making picks and betting on games, and everybody, in the underworld will be healthy again because they don't get any pensions, which I think is important to note.
That's right.
And the life expectancy isn't always as long as it seems to be. One day you're in all you have to do is see American Gangster. One day the guy's, in the back of his house with a lake behind him. The next day he's coming out of a place in Brooklyn and he's wet. So
that's funny.
It's all good. It's all good, Aldo. I think basically it's going to be tough not to play at the stadiums.
Yeah, but Mike,
I think they got to come back. Let's come back. Look, you got to take it on, man. Sooner or later, you got to face the enemy.
Right.
You know?
Mike, did you get a chance to see that spring training game where they had Anthony Rizzo and Chris Bryant mic'd up? ESPN did. It was, about a month ago or so.
Yes.
You know what? That's what they got to do. If they're going to play with no fans, then you have players mic'd up and you make it entertaining.
That's right, yep.
You can make it work. You know, yes, you miss the electricity of not having the fans there, but there are some innovative things that can be done to make it interesting for the sports fan on television. So this could be an opportunity and not necessarily something bad. So I'm all for it. Let's get these guys.
Yeah, I mean, I'm watching Fred Astaire movies. You know?
Oh, no.
Yeah, I'm actually skipping through the house when the wife yells dinner. It's crazy.
Don't tell me that. I can't imagine that.
Just skipping, just happy to be here. I'm watching some of the worst movies of all time. You know, as much as we love the old movies, I'll give you thousands of bad old movies. Thousands. You know, I saw Singing in the Rain the other night. That's what it's come down to. Okay, Debbie Reynolds in the yellow rain suit, and I'm excited.
That's actually a good movie. Hey, Mike,
I'm crazy.
Is this the longest you've gone in your life without placing a bet, or are you betting on, how long the soap dish lasts or whatever? I don't know.
Look, all I'm saying is I understand the death count and everything else, but believe me, there's no doubt in my mind. I mean, the domestic violence has to be up. I mean, I'd be crazy. I mean, who knows? Somebody probably had a lot of at each other while we were on the air just now. I mean, they've had enough.
It's been a month since you laid a bet on anything, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, but that's fine. I'm not missing that. I really don't. I mean, I'm busy. I got games down here. I got Golden Tee. I got the bowling machine. I got all sorts of stuff to keep me. Not everybody's got that. And you know what? But they got fit. Thank God for social networking. And I see Fat Mike. My guy Fat Mike is on now. I loved him. I brought him up a couple weeks ago, and all of a sudden, Aldo, as usual, the godfather of Bears Barroom, brings him right in, and then we're wishing him nothing but the best with all the other great shows, right?
Yeah, he had an excellent debut on Monday, and then was a guest on Shy Fans in the Stands yesterday. This guy's getting more exposure than you and me put together.
He's a big man. Big man, Big Mike. He should be, Fat Mike, I know what God bless him. Because I'm telling you right now, I always wanted to know. I used to watch like even Ali. And Buster Douglas, we know what happened to him, Michael. You know what? How do you get out of shape so fast? You just beat Tyson. You were in the best shape of your life. 6 months later, you're fat and you got a... And now I'm finding out myself personally that you can, yes. Yes, we're shoveling it in, aren't we, Aldo?
Oh, my gosh, I've gained about 10 pounds in the last month.
I mean, you're afraid to... And you're justifying it. I mean, look, I'm tired of the weight. To put it in the words of Raging Bull, I'm tired of the weight thing. But I got to be honest with you. I know I'm keeping it under control, even though I know I'll put on a few pounds where I'll be able to lose it quickly if we need to. But I'm fearing for a lot of other people. Look, the diabetes is going to go up. We know that.
Oh, yeah.
The suicide hotline's up 300%,
oh my God.
Which is unbelievable right now.
Oh, my God.
Because people got depression and everything else that's going on. And, I'm glad in a way that I'm at the stage of my life, and I know you probably feel the same way, where if I had been into hot dog business back in my 30s and this happened, look out now.
Oh, my goodness, yeah.
Right? What are you going to do? And how about you if you're working back? Well, they say TV's essential, or the TV people, but I got to be honest with you, about 85% of them are. That's just the way. Am I out of line by saying that, or do you agree totally?
I totally.
I don't even know what to believe anymore. I just go out like ping pong. Bing, 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 bing. All I know is I still look out the window like my dog. You know what Lucky said to me the other day? What is wrong? What's everybody around for? He used to have the dog used to have quiet time. I mean, what doesn't Doodles Doodles knows something's going on.
Oh, yes, the poor guy. I mean, first of all, he hasn't had a grooming in 6 weeks, and so he's starting to look like just a big hairball walking around. So, and I keep telling my wife, I'd be glad to give him a haircut. She goes, "Put those scissors down now."
Right.
So
even BB, when I went out with BB, she used to have hair that went all the way down to her rear end, man, straight like Crystal Gale.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
She's getting back to that.
Nice.
I mean, I'm just being serious. Everybody's walking around. You know what we look like now? If you take out a picture of yourself at your best, okay, and you turn up a picture of yourself now, you'll look like you got a DUI and you just got to bed. That's it. You know, right? I mean, come on. It's like a bad DUI. We look like if any of you ever had a DUI, you look like you had a DUI.
That's right.
If you take a picture of yourself now, period.
Well, Mike, I think we're going to pull the plug on another great show in Mike North history, Mike North Advantage history. Let me cue up the music here and play us out. You got any final?
You're running the board like you're like a pilot.
Yeah, we're going down. Is what we're doing.
It's like Mulholland Falls when the pilot gets shot in the head and the plane's ready to go with the engine about.
Did you see the Denzel?
We had a lot of fun today. Mulholland Falls, is that it? It's one of the most underrated movies out there.
Yes.
With the Jazz Palminteri.
Yes. I love that movie. Yes. We'll have to talk after next week's draft show. We'll have to talk about some of our favorite movies.
Yeah, we'll have somebody big next week. Aldo's putting his foot down.
What?
I had to get Theismann. I go, I'll get somebody big. So we got Theismann. We had a great time, didn't we, Aldo?
Oh my gosh, you talk about a class act. Joe Theismann is that plus 10. Yep. Absolutely, man.
Hey, folks, have a good one at the bar room. We love you.
All righty, take care now.